Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of vBrownBag. Hold on. There we go. Welcome to vBrownBag. My name is Chris Williams, and tonight we've got Steve Jin from DoubleCloud talking about REST APIs for vSphere. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Get in on the conversation. If you are in the audience, I will be taking the questions from the Q&A chat panel that you see there. Just put in the questions there, and I'll ask them of Steve. If you are on Twitter, if you @ vBrownBag or hashtag vBrownBag, I will be monitoring Twitter as well, and I can field questions from there as well. We also have a couple of other compatriots, partners in crime. The AsiaPac, EMEA, LATAM episodes are also running. We have one every Thursday for APAC. For EMEA, we have them on Tuesdays, and for Latin America, we have them on Thursdays at 7 p.m. So with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Jin. All right, Steve, you are the presenter.
Okay, so can you see my screen right now?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Not yet.
Okay, show my screen.
There we go. I see your desktop.
So we'd like to.
Oh wait, it went away. It went away.
Okay. So is it possible to share the other screen because I'm doing?
Yeah, if you go into the show my screen options, hit the little arrow drop down, and it'll flip it over to the other screen.
Okay. Did it work?
No, I still see the other one. If you hit the little screen drop down section, it should allow you to select the different screens that you have.
Are you sure? Make the host. Okay.
Oh, you just made me presenter. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Okay, so let me move my screen. I think I can use the other screen. It's fine too.
Steve, you left the webinar.
I left the webinar?
Yeah, you dropped out of the presenter section.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Can you log back in real quick?
So what should I do next?
Just log back into the webinar, and then I'll set you up to present your screen again.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, it's pretty fast.
Are you back in? There you are. Okay, let me set you up as presenter. There you go. You now have presenter options. Go ahead and hit the drop down under Show My Screen, and then select which screen you want to show. All right. I see your. Yeah. There we go. I see your presentation.
Okay, that's awesome. So thank you, everyone. Yeah. So today I'm going to present the REST API. Last week we just released this new product. Immediately got a lot of attention. Thanks to Jonathan to invite me to this awesome community. I think today's presentation, because we're talking to other experts in the community, so I'll rather think this is a two-way communication rather than just my presentation. So I think you can help us to give us some feedbacks and the wish list, all sorts of things. All right. So without further ado, let's let's jump to next part. A little bit about myself. I was working for VMware for almost 5 years, and then I wrote a book on there, the vSphere SDK. I also create the open source Java API, which is kind of de facto in the community, and everywhere I go to the consulting, and a lot of people just say, "Oh, we use this." We also like a blog about the VMware stuff, DevOps, and programming. Check out my blog site, and also I create a company. We have some products over here, and let's move on. today's REST API. So this is the agenda. We're going to talk about the REST APIs. First, we'll go to a quick overview, and then we'll jump to a quick demo. And after demo, we'll go a little bit deeper on the API side, and we'll talk about like what the API patterns and what's the architecture of this. And after that, we're talking about the scripting and programming with the REST API, and we'll do another like a programming demo. So that will be a little bit also a short one. And then if we have time, you're interested, we can talk a little bit about other tools and the products, and then finally we get the conclusion. So we hopefully finish everything by like 40 minutes. So as I said, this is like two-way communication. So if you have any question or have any comment, feel free to interrupt me anytime. Or if you want to send a message and to the channel, and then that would be great too.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, so before we jump to our API, so we would like to cover a little bit about the VMware API. So VMware API is different type of API. It's a kind of management API. It's different from the execution API. VMware used to buy a company called SpringPath, but that's a part of Pivotal, the spring off right now. So that Spring is the execution API. So it's different from the management API, right? It can do everything by itself, but management API essentially is a kind of remoting. It can tell VMware what to do, but it's bundled with the product itself. The API, management API itself cannot do everything you need to do. So it has to be a product out there. In terms of the product and the APIs, GUI, all sorts of things, or rather think the product is like a model. If we have to fit in that the MVC model, right? The APIs, GUIs, and other views. So those APIs are very important for the automation and product integration, right? So there are many different factors we need to think about. Now, so today we have like VMware in a community, we have there are a lot of APIs, management APIs out there. Right? So there's a couple of challenges of using the API. So there are several aspects. So I just quick run through. So that actually helps us understand why we create this REST API by ourselves. Right. So the complexity, right? The number of the APIs available out there is a lot, right? So the granularity of the API, sometimes some product has one API, sometimes the product has different sets of API. Essentially, one aspect of the product, there's a set of API out there. So the product also has the versioning, the back compatibility issues, and the language binding, right? Different, if you happen to use different language, it's just not officially supported, right? So that's it could be challenging too. Of course, there's official and open source APIs, right? So that's one aspect. The other is the consistency, right? The format of APIs and all sorts of things. Especially the identifier of different things, right? Because the core is the vSphere itself, and then you build a lot of different other products on top of that. How to navigate those different APIs. Most likely those days people start adopt different products that together with the vSphere itself, right? The vSAN API, for example. The NSX, right, is adopted by the community gradually. All right, so how those APIs talk to each other. There are also like the API versus commandlets, what to use for certain automation case. In particular, REST API, this is something we're going to talk about emphasize a lot more today. So the REST API VMware has today, there are a couple of them, a few of them actually. The big issue I see out there in terms from the programming scripting point of view is there actually no modeling or some modeling of the implementation. So it's not like the vSphere API, I think it's done like an excellent job out there. They start the modeling, everything is very clear, the object model, the documentation, even though overall it's complex, but it's like it's complex by its very nature, right? The other thing is the official IDL. There's only, among all the stuff, I only find like NSX has the Rumble API out there. And then different APIs, the consistency, right? So all sorts of things out there. So in the VMware today, there are two types of styles in the management API. So one is SOAP-based. So vSphere API is the SOAP-based, right? The ESX agent API, storage, SSO, vSAN API. Actually, vSAN didn't choose the REST API. Instead, it picked SOAP again. I think they made a pretty good choice. The REST API, the NSX is through acquisition, right? We realized essentially by acquisition, they picked the REST API from the very beginning. And there's something new, which is called vAPI. It's something from the VMware vSphere team. Now, here's a little bit comparison of the SOAP and the REST. And I think overall, there are many different points here. And I just want to emphasize that the SOAP versus REST in terms of programming concept, and the REST API is kind of more OO than the SOAP. So that's why sometimes in the community people talk a lot, using preferred REST than the SOAP itself. Now, so that's basically a little bit introduction on the VMware side. So that does help us to set a context why we create the REST API for vSphere, even though there's a vAPI already. Now, so I just want to emphasize three different things. First, DoubleCloud REST API is a complete API. It's not like a vAPI, just very limited functionality out there. So everything you can do with the vSphere from the GUI, you can do with the DoubleCloud REST API. So it's a full set of the vSphere API itself. And the second point I want to make is the REST API, we have the scalability in mind when we designed this. So it can scale to many vCenter and ESX servers at a time. So this may not be a big issue for the small shops, but definitely it's a good concern for medium and large environment, because vCenter there's a number of limitation out there, right? So most shops, medium and big shops, they run many vCenter servers. We can also work with vCenter as well as ESX. This is actually the benefit by the VMware API itself. We also have this is the good thing. So the vSphere, the DoubleCloud REST API is consistent with the vSphere API. So it's zero learning curve. Based on exactly the same model of the existing SOAP API. So basically, you can cross-reference whatever the vSphere API itself, the SOAP-based, with our REST API. So essentially, at the back, very back of the product is empowered by another product called VI Java NG. It's essentially is Java binding for the vSphere API. Now, so this API, it's a lot of people ask me, say, is that vAPI or what's different? So again, so it's totally different from the vAPI. vAPI is kind of redesigned from the SOAP APIs, but the DoubleCloud REST API is very consistent. So if we have a take a look at this diagram, right? So at the so this is left side is the vSphere API. So there's an identification, and then there's a model, and then there's a SOAP, right? So every underlying two layers is exactly the same. So vSphere DoubleCloud REST API is exactly the same as the vSphere API. So we only differ from the REST API, and on top of that, the language binding could be different too. And so next part is DoubleCloud REST API server, right? So this is actually very simple. It's written in Java, very small, and actually you don't have to install to have an installer. So it's very lightweight. You can install that on another machine other than the vCenter or ESX. So that's a very clean separation. But at the same time, if you really want to embed that into the vCenter, it's durable. And so it's we also thinking the high value features, right? The caching. If you have a caching, and then you can offload the vCenter from all different applications, right? So that can be very helpful. The AD integration, so that you can do like the security checking, quarters, all those things. Can do the metering, do the logging, right? So that's something we're considering. Now the demo. So before I jump to that, let's I want to emphasize all the questions welcome, comments, and just feel free to interrupt me anytime. So we're going to demo a couple cases and the installation. Actually, we don't have an installer. So what I showed you is once you download the file, the one single jar file from our website, and then you can just simply run that. And then we'll start the API server, or there's, excuse me. And then the main part, we're going to show you the Swag-based web GUI to see what is available in the API and make some live calls. So we showed you like how to add a new vCenter server and list all the VMs, get information from one VM, a specific property of a VM, and then, you know, this is just like reading information, retrieve information from those objects, but how you take some actions. So I can show you like simple cases like power on and power off a VM or rename a virtual machine, right? So that's something we are going to demo. Now, without you, let me show you. Okay, so I already have downloaded that stuff. So this is a simple jar file. If you double click on it, and then you will open. Now I'm going to show you actually using a command line. It's actually give you more control. So what you could do is you know, just type, like I already typed it just now before the demonstration. So you could like java-jar and vmrest.jar, right? That's very simple. And now once you type this, and immediately will open the Swag web application for you. So you can see that immediately. It's open to the default browser in your system. Now, I would like to add a little bit more comments on what is available in this. But as you can see, we didn't put a parameter out there, but you can essentially add more parameter out there. So you can specify the port number by default. If you don't specify, we open to 8080. And then you can also secure the website by the access key and a secret key. So that's something you try to access this API server, and then you will be prompted this access key or security key. So by default, we just editing and DoubleCloud, right? Now, this about how to run this web server. Now this is already open, right? So here is a full documentation of what is available out there. So basically, you can see from this web page, we essentially have, if you compare with the vSphere API itself, we essentially every object you find the vSphere API is showing up over here, right? So as we would do with the vSphere API itself, the first thing we need to do is, find the service instance, and then we add one vCenter or one ESX server out there. So what I'm going to find the service instance, right? So if we open the service instance, and then we have all the URLs and the methods for the REST API. So I'm going to say I'm going to use the REST API. I'm going to add a new vCenter server out there. So now this show me the whatever parameter I need to enter. So I'm going to give a try. Say this is the order of the stuff doesn't matter because it's a JSON, right? So now this is an IP. You can put the fully qualified domain name out there. Either way should work. Now, so I have this already, and then what I need to do is just say execute. Now, once we execute and then return 200, which is successful, right? And now we also can see this curl command is got generated, right? So next time you just copy, paste, and you can just repeat through your shell commands. Later on, we'll cover more about this. Now, once you have the service instance, and then you can see, per a particular service instance, right? So I'm going to show you, say, this service instance I identify by 100, right? So, and then you can say execute, and then you see all the information, the properties over there. More often than not, you actually have a lot more than you need. What you're going to do is you can specify a more specified little less. So basically, you can say, I'm going to try it out. And what I'm going to do is 160, 0. And let's say I'm only interested, for example, let's say content, what's the vendor, right? Okay, so you can specify this and then execute it. Now you see it's VMware, right? Now the beautiful thing is we can actually also specify multiple. Now, if we execute it, and then we see two, right? Right. So you can specify any of those. If you're interested, say, hey, I only interested in the top level. Right. It's a super flexible. Now, this is how to add the vCenter, right? We have done, you can delete this vCenter. I'm not going to show you that. Now let's do something interesting with the virtual machine. Now the virtual machine, when you click on this, get without any parameter, and then what you're going to get is a list of all the virtual machines, right? So you can find, and then you can get an ID of all those. And what I'm going to find is like, I just had a like CSL. So this one is something I'm going to use. This is the ID. Now with this ID, similar thing, you can try it out, this, right? And then again, there's a lot. So most likely you can do this, you can specify whatever properties you want to have. Now, yeah, you want to get a name, right? So very simple, you get this name. Now, what if you want to have, say, the power state, all those information? Now, right? So what you want to have over here is you want to get a name, get how much memory it has, what the power state. Maybe is that something you are interested the most. Now you don't want anything else. So once you execute this, and then you get only what you need. Right? So this is the power of how we retrieve different information from the system. Right? Very flexible. Now let me show you something more. For example, the see, oh, what's the state of, okay, let me see. Okay, so let me power this on. Okay, so let me power off this VM. Now let's see power off. Okay, power off. Okay, this guy. Now again, we need an identifier, right? Ouch. Right, and then you can say you can execute this. Now we get a task, right? By the way, you can see it's power off already done, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to see, if you're programming without, the GUI, what you're going to do is say, I have a task and I can track the status of the task. See, this is the task, right? So I'm going to try it out. Okay. Now I got all the information about this task, right? So from over here, we can see whether this is a success. Yeah, this task already a success, right? So that's how we use this REST API to track this, right? Now I can do a little bit more. Say I'm interested to rename this. Rename this, right? So I'm going to say try it out. So this is ESL for vBrownBag. Okay, so now we have this out here. I'm going to say execute this. Okay. Oh, there's something goes wrong.
You don't need to pass in the IP and MOID.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. No wonder it doesn't work.
Right.
All right. See, we see the task over here, and let's see. See, this changed, right?
Nice. Yep.
Yeah. So one point I want to make here is everything you can do from the vSphere API, you can do with the DoubleCloud REST API. Okay, so this is about the demo. There are even more complicated, like you can add new hardware, those things. You can also do that, but limited by time, I'm not going to do more demos. So let's let me get back to the presentation again. All right, awesome. So next slide. So I'm going to talk about, as far as the server architecture, right? So, oops, sorry. So here is the API architecture. So what we see over here, the API server is sitting in the middle, right? So he exposed the REST API to whatever the browser, or you have a mobile app, or in external other APIs, command line, whatever you do over here. Will you speak in a language of REST API in the JSON format? And now we get that request, and we convert that to our API talk to the vCenter, talk to ESX is still SOAP. So essentially, we like interpret all the conversation between you to the vCenter servers for you. All right. So this is how it works. That's why I mentioned my previous slides, like via Java NG is used. Because we talk to many different vCenter for ESX at the same time, so the performance and the memory consumption is a big requirement. So with that we can reduce the memory footprint and increase the speed. Now this is a simple case, right? If you have a complex case, you want to load balancer, you can also do that. So from the client side, it doesn't matter, right? But load balancer expose a single IP address, and I didn't find the right chart over here. If you see my cursor over here, so basically we can have multiple API server in a cluster, and then load balancer will point to whatever cluster and then do the request. So that session can manage out there. All right. So in that way, if you have like a 2 or 3 cluster out there, and you can handle all the REST API management to all your vCenter servers. Of course, if you want to talk to the ESXi server directly, that's doable too. Now, that's the architecture, how the topology of the system is going to work. By the way, if you really want to do like the REST API server embed in the vCenter server, that's also doable. But we, kind of reluctant to do that way because, the vCenter server is a critical piece. If you don't want to, if you can not to touch it, and that will be the best, right? But if you really want to embed this into vCenter server, that's doable because for very simple reason. DoubleCloud REST APIs essentially is a Java application, right? So vCenter already have the Java runtime installed out there. So we just need to tweak the port management out there, expose the right the stuff in the right port. That's it. Now, so let's talk about the DoubleCloud REST API URL patterns. So as I mentioned, the same object model for vSphere. That's why I say it's almost zero learning curve if you're familiar with the vSphere API already. But if you're not familiar, the REST API itself, if you just show me what I just demo, and then that gives you like a very good starting point. If you have just reporting, billing, or some simple monitoring application, that's pretty much good enough, right? So you don't have to go through the vSphere API, property collector, all those things. The REST API cover everything for you out there.
Hey, Steve, got a question real quick?
Yes. Yes.
Does VMware still support vCenter if it's installed on the vCenter?
That's a good question. That's why I just mentioned we rather not to touch the vCenter server. Gotcha. That's something, I would suggest not to do unless you have some compelling reason for doing that. Mm-hmm. And the support issue is more like between VMware and a customer. We are ISV, right? Mm-hmm. So we cannot do much out there, but we can try our best to give that a try. But essentially, as I mentioned,
best practice
running the API server, right. It's not a big deal because you can even run on your desktop, very good performance.
Gotcha.
So there's not much, All right. So the URL pattern. So we have like get method, post method. So we don't do like a put, all those things. That just sometimes confuse people, especially when you try to say create a new virtual machine. What are you going to use, right? Is a post or put? So we don't do that. We keep it simple, right? So if you want to do retrieve information, and then you just get. If you want to do something on the vCenter server side, and just post, right? Now the pattern is very simple. If you have a HTTP, so we, by the way, we support HTTP. If you want to HTTPS, so we can easily configure that for you. Basically, you need a SSL terminator, right? If you know Nginx or those things, it's very easy to configure. Now the API server, right? This is a server where you run our REST API server, and then the object type, right? It's a virtual machine, or it's a host system, or those things. And then here's the part. Basically, this is ID, right? So the ID has two parts. One is the vCenter. Where does this come from, right? We're managed by where. So the vCenter ID is either IP address or fully qualified name. And then there's MOR ID, which is, what people already know VMware. So this is a pretty common way. And then you have the slash the property set, right? So you can name all those properties and can traverse the path all the time. Now that's simple, right? So if you don't have if you don't have all this, right? So it's essentially this is list operation. Basically, it will list all the virtual machines managed and covered by this API server, right? So across all the different vCenters. And then we have like, say, if you have this ID and without the property name in a URL, and then we get all the properties of a virtual machine for you. Now, the beauty of our product is that it doesn't matter which version of vCenter server you're using, right? So we don't say, hey, we only support to 5.5 or whatever, or 6.5. And we work all across all the way from 4 to 6.5. So if it is 6.5, we retrieve that information. If it is 4, and then we only retrieve the properties of version 4. So you don't need to worry anything about that. We take care of it. Now, as I mentioned, if you just need a particular properties, right, you can just specify those as part of the URL and separate with the comma. And then you can add as many as you want. Right. Now, for the singleton project, singleton objects, like the service instance, alarm manager, those things, there's only one instance in our system. And then you can just skip the ID. In the VMware case, essentially for like an alarm manager, there's ID, but who knows? Why should you care? There's only one. So we just simplified this, just provide IP. That's good enough. Now the post option is also very simple, right? So you have the API server and then the object type and then the ID. Again, the vCenter and MOR itself. Now, after that is the method name. Now, this is sometimes a bit complicated because you see in my demo, right? So if you just rename a virtual machine, it's simple. But if you want to add a hard disk and then the device, the configuration, the spec, it can be complicated. But that's definitely doable. So in that case, the existing vSphere API documentation is very, very useful, right? So you don't have to do something more out there. And when we designed this, we try, in the Swag GUI, we try to do like populate all the data objects in the request body. But somehow there's a bug because VMware, the data objects, sometimes they embed nest itself one another, right? So when that happened in our system, it didn't work very well because the Swag doesn't know how to handle this. And then there's an infinite loop out there. So that's why in the end we give up. But in the future, if Swag fixes that problem, we can easily add that feature. Now, so what we're going to do next. So this is a longer vision, right? So we can have like this API platform over here, and we can add like authentication, metering, logging. This is like a typical concept of API gateway, right? And then on the right side, so this is all VMware products. Today we support vCenter ESX, right? We can also support like NSX, vSense. So we try to like unify everything. And so that in the future, when you do the browse, application, browser, mobile app, anything, right? So it can just single centralized API access. That's something we want. If you have some other requirements, feel free to talk to us. So the programming and scripting, the REST API. So basically, in the previous Swag demo, we already showed you, right, that you can automatically generate the curl command for you. But you can, because it's a REST API, it works across all the script language, right? So shell stuff, we already have that. And you can use a curl, you can use a JQ, and JQ is very, very powerful. And then there's Python, PowerShell, yeah, then JavaScript, which is very popular if you develop the web application or mobile application, right? And this is a scripting language. And then also there are program language like Java, C, Sharp, C, those things. For this part, I will only show the Java stuff. And if you want to use the REST API for serious programming, additional language binding may be needed. And so today we are still have the SOAP-based language binding. So essentially, if you are using if you're using Java to integrate with VMware for like a serious integration, and I think SOAP-based language binding like via Java is still, I think, the best choice. The reason for that is even though you can use our REST API, but the JSON format is not the Java object. You still need to do additional data marshalling, demushering, right? That can be some pain points. Okay, so without delay, let's jump to the programming demo. So first, I will show you we have created an open source project. So it's a VMware REST API. So if you access it and you can clone to your local, that's very easy, right? Feel free to do that. So I already have in my local. So let me show you where. Okay. So let me studio. Okay, so here is the studio, right? So if we look at this project, the structure is like a Maven project structure. So on the source, and we see main, and then I have 4 different language binding over here. So we have a Java. I have a couple more samples here, and I have PowerShell. We have a Python and list, the shell list VM, right? So I will go the opposite direction. I will first try the list this guy. This guy is very simple, right? It's based on a curl, and it just initially, excuse me. Initially, you post a message to the service instance to add that new vCenter, and then you can just list the other vCenter servers over here, right? So this is a very simple case. So let me run this, right? So I have this over here. So what I'm going to do is say list the VMs. Now all the stuff is listed out here. Before this presentation, I wanted to do the JQ, but JQ doesn't seem to work very well on Windows. There's some way to talk about, but it takes time, so I didn't get enough time to prepare for that. But if you're already running on Linux or Mac, and that should be straightforward. Right. So this is that helps you to parse those information very, very easily. This is like a shell script, right? So basically, you don't have to write those. What you can do is in the Slack, I just demoed to you, and you can after the live trial finish, and then you can just there's command listed out there. You can just copy paste, and then that's what you do with the shell programming. Now let's take a look at the Python. Python, right? We need a URL lib2 library, and then similar things. There's a couple of username, password, those things, and then you post this information at new vCenter, and then you basically get the come up with the the URL to list all the virtual machines, and then open it and read it. That's all you need to do. So over here, I have this guy. This is Python, right? So now I previously run this, right? So point to my Python runtime and just run this guy. Right. So pretty much all the virtual machines come back with the type, with the ID, with the path. We actually pick the path instead of just names, so that because could be duplicate names, right? So with the path, you know exactly where the virtual machine is actually in your inventory. This is Python, also very simple. There's a PowerShell, and the PowerShell is very similar, right? So what you need is the invoke REST method. It's available in the PowerShell 3.0. So if you have 2.2, you may need to upgrade. So this one is the oops. Okay. Now, so this actually, the format-wise is the best, right? So you can see the type and ID, very, very easy to understand. Okay, so this is PowerShell, and then there's Java stuff, and the Java is actually even easier, right? So we have list of VM, right? So this is something very simple. So I can like run the file, everything, right? So all those three samples is very simple, but it's cover very basic, the typical flow, right? So first thing you add a vCenter, and then you come up the URL, and then either get or post. Very simple. So that's pretty much on the scripting side. So any question in the audience?
Let me double check. Nothing locally. Going over to Twitter. Nope, we're good. It's awesome.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Oh, too simple. All right. Okay. So basically, we kind of get the conclusion, right? So what I'm trying to say is the REST API can be very simple, and we can have like a simple API server can have complete feature support on the vSphere side. And we can also make the stuff as scalable as you want. And basically, in the future, all your VMware infrastructure can be managed by one API server. That's a centralized, everything is managed for you. And advanced features like a caching, all those things can work for your benefit as well. Because in that way, it can have the better performance and also lower the load on the vCenter server. Because in that way, instead of going to vCenter individually, and load data from our cache, especially when you do like retrieve the information, right? So that can be a huge benefit. Yeah. So that's pretty much about our REST APIs, and you can try it out. We have a free trial on there at DoubleCloud.net. And once you download, it's very simple. You just need to double click, and then boom, you can play with it. So that's pretty much it. And by the way, I mentioned we have some free tools for you. And let me see. So this is a VMware deploy tool. Actually, it's also very easy to use. If you haven't tried this, and so basically, whatever you can do with OVF tools, you can do this, all the GUI stuff, very easy to use. And you can also manage the VMs. You can list all this regular expression, and you can also manage the data stores. Once you load it, it's very, very fast.
Nice. Okay. And that's on the downloads page of your website, right?
Yeah, it's everything. This is a free tool. Feel free to download it, and then we still try to improve it, because that comes from my own pain points. Because one time I was with a customer, and they tried to deploy our research tool, and then they couldn't because the web GUI didn't work very well.
Nice.
So after I come back, I said, oh, why don't we just do a quick one? And then there's interest from the community, so we keep doing this. Nice. Okay, that's pretty much what I have to present today.
Cool. Thank you very much. There was one question so we have a couple of VMware vExperts in the audience, and they were asking if there is an NFR version for home labs of the API server.
Sure. Just email me, because right now we have the trial version that works for 1 month. Mm-hmm. We experts feel free to reach out to me, shoot me email, steve@doublecloud.org, and we definitely can give all of you experts free license, no problem.
Awesome, very cool. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much for this. It was fascinating, absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you for having me.
And thanks everybody for listening, and have a good evening.